A dreamy shoreline begins with light, reflections, and atmosphere. In today's tutorial, I'll guide you step by step through the secrets of painting soft clouds and dreamy skies in watercolor. So grab your brushes and let's get started. For this tutorial, we're using 100% cotton paper and just a few colors. Let's start with a simple sketch. I'll use the rule of thirds to draw the horizon line. Here on the left side, I'll add a couple of rocks. Now I'm drawing a few puddles along the shoreline. Feel free to draw your own version. They just need a long, flattened shape because of perspective. And finally, let's draw the reflections of the rocks in these puddles. This small detail brings a lot of interest to the scene. Okay, now I'll wet the whole paper to paint the first layer of the clouds. I usually like to use a Chinese calligraphy brush for more expressive clouds, but today I'm using a regular round brush, like this Silver Black Velvet size 8. I'll use Naples Yellow for the sunset clouds. I'll arrange the clouds in circular shapes to add movement to the sky and create a gentle sense of flow. Then I'll paint them using short, vertical brush strokes like this. Okay, I'll pick up a small amount of paint on my brush and start painting on the wet paper. The wetness is just right. The paint isn't spreading too much, so we're good to go. As I move toward the center, the brush strokes get smaller and shorter to create perspective. Then, they gradually become larger again as we move to the right. Always keeping that circular arrangement. And finally, this smaller cloud that kinda looks like a croissant. I'll also apply Naples Yellow along the horizon to create a glowy sunset. Now I'll add permanent rose to the mix and gently paint over the still wet clouds, leaving some of the yellow showing through, especially on the upper areas. For this to work, your brush needs to have a very small amount of paint. This technique works best on 100% cotton paper. If you're using cellulose paper, you need to let the paper dry and then re-wet it, and even then, you might not get the same soft blends. Now, I'll tilt the paper to help the paint settle smoothly. Okay, let's make the horizon a bit more dramatic by adding permanent rose to the right and left corners. And yes, my paper is still wet. This is the magic of cotton paper. Remember, use a very small amount of paint on your brush. I'll tilt the paper once again. I'll add one more small cloud, and that's it for the first layer. Now I'll dry the paper completely using a hair dryer. Next, I'll re-wet the paper very carefully since we already have paint on it. Now I'm mixing blue-gray and permanent red light to add shadows to the clouds. I'll pick up a very small amount of paint and use rounded brush strokes under the clouds to suggest soft shadows and give them volume. I'm still respecting the circular arrangement of the clouds, so my strokes are slightly diagonal. Then I'll dry and re-wet the paper again. Now I'll use pure blue-gray to paint the sky. I'm painting around the clouds and leave some white space to define their shape and keep them bright. This is one of my favorite parts. It's when the clouds really start to look like clouds. The wetness of the paper allows me to keep the edges soft, so everything feels light and airy. Here I'm breaking up the clouds, but not completely. I still leave some white spaces to suggest small clouds connecting the bigger ones, just like we can observe in the real sky. This does require some practice and observation, but it's really fun and you'll learn in no time. Observing real skies helps a lot with this kind of detail. I pay special attention to the spaces between the clouds. Here closer to the horizon, I'll use a lighter blue mix. Then I dry and re-wet the paper again. I'll repeat the same process to add another layer of blue. This makes the clouds stand out even more. See how soft and dreamy they are looking now. Each layer adds more depth and atmosphere, and we can do that gradually and safely. Sometimes it's nice to slow down and just watch the paint move. Next, I'll mix blue-gray and permanent rose to add another layer of shadows. I'll use the same brush strokes as before. Then I soften the shadows a little bit with a damp brush. Finally, I'll use the leftover paint on my palette to add some thin, small clouds near the horizon. Now let's paint the shore. I'll add only below the horizon line because I don't want any paint escaping into the sky area. I'm using Naples Yellow and a mix of Naples Yellow and Permanent Rose to paint the reflection of the sky in the puddles. I'm not trying to match the exact colors, I'm just creating a colorful, beautiful illusion. I'll pick up some blue-gray to paint the puddle closest to us, as well as some leftover paint from my palette. Then I'll darken the lower right corner using a mix of blue-gray and permanent rose to add depth and help frame the scene. Next, I'll use burnt sienna, ultramarine, and a mix of these two colors to paint the rocks. Using a small brush, I'll paint small sections at a time, with absolutely no rush. I keep switching colors and let them mix on the paper. Rocks are imperfect, so irregular colors and brush strokes really help. Now, using a small flat brush, I lift some paint to create texture. Just remember, the brush must be damp and you need to clean it every time you lift. And we can add some shadows to enhance the effect. Then I use the flat brush to soften the bottom edge of the rock. Next, I'll do the same thing on the smaller rock. Now I'm preparing a very juicy mix of burnt sienna and ultramarine, but I'm not mixing them completely. I'll use this mix to paint the wet sand, carefully working around the puddles. Make sure the mix is very diluted since we're painting on dry paper. Again, there's no need to rush, just keep avoiding the puddles. They look much lighter now next to the wet sand, and work like tiny windows reflecting the sky. Sometimes I apply the paints directly on the paper, without mixing them on the palette, to get this beautiful color gradation. You don't need to control everything. Watercolor will do part of the work for you. This is one of the most fun parts of painting sand. The larger the area, the more you can play with the paints. Keep them juicy, let them dance on the paper. Next, I'll splatter clean water with a rigger brush and add tiny dark spots to create texture on the sand in the foreground. Finally, using a dark mix of burnt sienna and ultramarine, I'll paint the reflection of the rocks on the puddles. I drew the puddles alternating with the sand to create this broken reflection effect. Feel free to simplify this part. The idea is to make the reflections feel more natural and dynamic. And we're done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.